Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back, man. If it's your first time here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, man, and like, man. Let's get it started. So today, I want to talk about the phone game, and I want to give you a little bit of a story time. Why I feel like the phone game is good, but at the same time, it can also can have a little bit of downsides. So this story is going to be when I first got into the phone game and how I got robbed multiple times. I've gotten robbed about 3 times so far. I want to talk about the first 2 incidents, and then we'll talk about the last one, which I took a massive lesson on, a massive loss, you could probably say. The first 2 were when I first got into the game of like buying and selling phones. I was always eager to make profit, in a sense where whenever I went to go meet somebody, or whenever I went to talk to a client online, like I was always like, if the way he was talking to me, if the way he was like saying any bad things, I was always like, okay, I'm gonna just go to this person. So the first person, he ended up, I was trying to sell him it was an old device. I think it was probably like a J3, like a Samsung J3. This device is probably like 2015, so it's an old device. So messaged me on Facebook. She's like, hey, I want to buy this device. I'm like, okay, sure. We're going back and forth. But while I was messaging her, she was being very disrespectful. And in my eyes, I was like, you know what? Like, she's probably going through it. She's probably had a rough day, whatever, and nothing can really go wrong. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go meet this person. So I go to meet her. I get there, and then literally she's like, okay, I can't come to the door. Can you come to me? I'm like, okay, sure, I'll do that. But before that, I knew that she was not being very respectful, right, in the messages, right? But I was like, you know what? Let me just give it a try. Let's see what happens. So I go to her. I end up selling her the device, right? So she comes to my door. She literally takes the phone and just grabs it, and she runs away. And then she's like, you know what? If you come back and try to grab the phone, I'm gonna do something to you. So in that transaction, I think I probably lost about $100, which is, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna fight her or try to get my phone back. I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna take a loss and move on. The second one it was kind of a weird incident as well. This guy messaged me on Facebook again. So what happens on Facebook, a lot of my customers are from Facebook. So while I'm messaging this person, he tells me, hey, can you deliver this phone? So a lot of times in this business, people want delivery all the time. So I'm like, okay, sure. I can meet you. He says, can you meet me at this address? I'm like, fine. But while he was messaging me, he tells me that, hey, I'm gonna be wearing a mask when I'm giving you the phone. While I'm buying the phone off you. I'm like, interesting. You're gonna be wearing a mask? He's like, because he has some type of issue with this kid or something like that he's kind of going through. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'll go meet you. I get there, right? I pull up with my car. This guy comes out. He has a mask on. So typically, whenever I'm meeting customers, I don't really typically get out my car. That's like kind of the biggest thing, right? So I'm always kind of self-aware, because safety is very important. Because if somebody tries to do something, at least I'm in my vehicle and they can't really, get to me that quick. So typically I'll open my window up, and my window will be like barely even open, because I just you can't trust nobody nowadays. He comes up. He's like, hey, let me take a look at the phone. And I typically, how I do the transaction is, while I'm in my car, I sit there. If the house is on the right side, I literally park where, I could see them on the right side of my window, right? So my window is open a little bit. I could see them. So he comes up, I got the phone, I'm just showing him the phone right here, Here you go, the condition, man, everything is all good. Okay, so typically in this incident, the customer would give me the money already, but this guy was like, you know what, can I take a look at this device? I just want to make sure. It's my first time having an iPhone, like I want to make sure everything is all good. So I'm like, okay, cool, bro. I don't think he's gonna do much, He seems like he's legit. I give him the phone, and then the guy literally, he's like, you know what, if you want this phone back, like I'm gonna do something to you. I'm like, wow, okay, you know what, cool. So he takes the phone and he starts running. So in that instance, I'm like, you know what, another L again, right? So those are my 2 L's that I took. And with those 2 that I realized is like, the lesson there is like, the first one, she was being very disrespectful. Automatically, like that should have been a red flag. And I was being too impatient. So I'm trying to make the money and I'm not really following my principles, and just kind of wanted to go to the person. The second one, the guy asked me, literally, he was wearing a mask, so I couldn't see his face. And I kind of trusted him, because he was messaging me all day, just kept saying, hey, where are you, right? So another thing too is like impatient, like just wanting the device now, which is okay. But if you just kept like nagging me and messaging, there's something there, right? And me giving him the phone, because typically if I'm in my car and just showing you the front screen and everything is all good, you should be able to trust me that you should buy this phone. But I guess he knew what he was coming for was to get the phone. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I did that. I gave him the phone. He ran off. The third incident was probably the one that I took the biggest loss on. And this one, it kind of just like, it really just Like it traumatized me for a couple of days, man. It was bad. So this one, I actually got robbed with a gun, you know what I mean, to my face. I'll break it down like this. say for example, you have John, right? This is my friend John. I known him for a couple years, you know what I mean? Since we were young, you know, since we were like, I probably say like 15 or so, you know. I knew him since we were growing up together, right? So this is kind of like a friend that I knew from back in the day. So John messages me one day. He's like, hey man, you know, I'm looking for some phones to buy. Do you have anything available? I see that you do a cell phone business. I'm like, yeah, I do run a cell phone business, you know what I mean? I can give you some phones and I do have some options. So I'm like, okay, sure. So John messages me. I'm like, we end up meeting one day. Everything went well, you know. He bought the device. Everything was all good. But, you know, while I was meeting this person, I knew that he was doing other things on the side, you know what I mean? I don't know what he was doing, you know, but he was doing other activities that I didn't agree with, right? And so I'm like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna make this transaction with this person. I sold him the phone. I went about my business. I mean, everything was all good. And then literally a couple of days later, the same person, John, messaged me. He's like, hey man, do you have any other devices? Maybe something like a newer, like an iPhone 15. At that time, this was last year. So at that time, 15 just came out. So I'm like, okay, sure, man. If I ever get a 15, I'll message you and I'll let you know. He's like, okay, sure. Awesome. So then I go about my day, and then one day I find the iPhone 15. So I'm like, okay. I message him. I'm like, hey John, are you interested in this iPhone 15? I just got an iPhone 15. Yeah, I'm actually interested, man. When do you want to meet for this phone? And, you know, I have cash for you. So he tells me, he's like, let's meet for the phone, but he's like, right now I'm not gonna be in the city. I'll have somebody else give you the money and you can exchange the phone. And I think this person also wants to buy phones as well, so you can make 2 transactions. I'm like, okay, cool. You know, I've already met this person, right? I've already done a deal with him. So what's the worst that could really happen, right? So in my mind, I'm thinking nothing could really go down. So I go to meet this person that he tells me. We end up connecting. He sends me his phone number. So he's like, okay, let's meet over here. I'm like, okay, sure. So I go meet this guy. We're at this public area, right? And we're meeting, you know what I mean? And the guy messages me like, hey, I just pulled up to the place. Let's meet. And I'm like, okay, sure. So automatically in this instance, like my guard is completely off, because like I trusted John, right? Because John told me, like I said, I've known him since we were kids, and you know, I know his family pretty well. I know he's not gonna try to do anything, you know. So I'm like, okay, sure. So automatically I go to my car, and I don't usually do this. I don't let nobody get into my vehicle. But there were some dudes, and they was from my same culture as me, right? Or you know what I mean? They're my people, right? So I'm thinking, you know, they can't really do anything to me. You know, what's the worst that can happen? So they come to the car and they're like, hey man, what's going on? We shake hands, and you know what I mean? Okay. And then we get in the car. So I typically don't let nobody get in my car, but I'm like, okay, sure, you guys can come in the car. They seem like, you know what I mean, they were good at that point. I'm like, okay. So we come into the car. So one of them is taking a look at the phone. He's making sure, you know what I mean, the Face ID, everything is working. So his other buddy also has another phone I'm giving him, so because they want to buy 2 phones. And that day too, because I was on the road, it was like a Friday, I believe, and you know, typically I don't really walk around with a lot of phones, but that day I had a lot of phones that were in my bag. So my bag was literally behind the seat. Whatever the person was sitting in the back, my car was there. So while they're checking their phones, right, they're both, the one guy is in the back, he's checking the phone, the guy in the front is checking the phone. They're making sure everything is all good. But at this point, I was kind of already like sketched out, because I'm like, you know what, you guys are checking, you're taking too long to look at this device. The buddy John already trusts me, you know what I mean? He already kind of told you that we won't have any problems. Like, you know, I do this is what I do. I run a cell phone business, right? And so next thing you know, the guy that's sitting in the front, he takes his gun out, literally takes his gun out and puts it in front of my face, right, and tells me, give me everything that you have. If you don't give me everything you got, I'm gonna shoot you. Literally, that's what he tells me. I'm like, bro, what? I'm like, what's going on here? You know, like, I'm confused right now. I'm like, are you serious right now? Like, and in my eyes, I was terrified, because I'm like, this guy too, he kind of looked like he was a little bit high, right? He might have been on drugs or something. So automatically, I didn't want to assume anything, but he was not in the right state of mind. So I'm like, you know what, bro, take the phone, right? And then his buddy in the back, on my bag, because it was back there, I saw him. I'm like, I'm peeking in the back. I see he goes in my bag. I had my phones in there. I had my wallet in there. So he goes in there, takes my wallet, takes my phone. I'd probably say like 14 devices, and these devices are all tied up into money. So I had a 13 Pro Max, XR, iPhone 11, a 12 Pro Max, you know what I mean, 14 Pro Max. I had like all the newer devices. Like, that's in that alone, you're looking like at least about like $7,000 in total. And then I had my wallet there too, which had a lot of cash in it, right? Because I make a lot of cash transactions and I buy devices. So while I'm on the road, I like to, make cash deals, right? Because we offer cash to customers and that kind of thing. So like in that wallet, I probably had about, I probably say $2,000 or so, roughly in cash, right? Yeah, it's not a lot. It's a lot of money to be walking around with, but yeah, so that much money. So combined, that was $9,000, you could say. So pretty much the guy in the back just starts taking the phones. And the guy in the front, he's telling me like, bro, give me everything you have. And then he tells me, give me your phone as well too. So I'm like, why do you need my phone? If I don't have a phone, how am I gonna do communication and anything like that? I'm like, you need my phone too? I'm like, okay, here, take my phone. And then literally, like, I just paused for a second. I'm like, you know what? At that point, I was like, just take everything, man. And he's like, he takes the gun and he's like, you know what? He's like, you need to. So he gets out of the car. He tells me to run away. Like, he's like, just drive off. Because he took everything already. He's like, drive off. He's like, make sure. He's like, act like nothing ever happened. And then I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to lose my life over some damn phones, Like, it's not, for me, I'm like my life is way more important than losing my life into just like a bunch of phones. At the end of the day, like, money is just, like, it's a tool. Like, I know I can make it back. So I drive off. I start going home, and then I just kind of I pause, I stop somewhere, and I just kind of reflect on it. I'm like, wow, that really happened. And then of course at that stage, I'm like questioning a lot of things. I'm thinking about the guy John that told me to go meet these people. I'm like why did he do this to me? Like, did he set me up? So I'm questioning all these things, right? But then it reminded me again, like, that was probably one of the biggest lessons I've ever took. I lost a lot of money in that transaction. We're talking about $9,000, and that money that I made was actually money to reinvest into the business. It wasn't even money that I was gonna spend. That's money that was in the phones to go make profit. So it's like people are literally just like, they want to rob me they don't understand how much work I've actually put in to accumulate and get all this money to go and reinvest into the business side of things. So when I thought about it, I'm like, okay, I need to sit down and really think about this. So I went home. Like, for a couple of days, I was just traumatized. Like, I couldn't believe it that this really happened to me. And there was, at that stage, I'm like, you know what, I think I'm done. Like, why should I even continue doing this? So that was those were thoughts that came up to my head, because I felt like, like, if people are gonna do this to me, right, and they're gonna rob me, and why should I continue doing this business? Because I'm like, it's too dangerous, like, it won't make any sense. And I'm the type of person, like, I don't really like telling people what happened to me. But then I told one of my mentors, and he was like, that's a deep one, man. And he couldn't believe it, and he was like, what are you gonna do next? I'm like, I don't know, man. I have to keep pushing and figure out a way to make it back. And so I looked at it like a great lesson, but it didn't stop me from pushing forward. At the end of the day, man, like, money comes and goes. So like, as long as you're providing value for people, you can always make that money back. Because I know that in this business, I started with 365, so I know what it takes to get to that stage. Probably gonna be hard, but to get there, to restart, to make that money back, that 9K, it's gonna be a lot of work. But I'm willing to put in the work and see what comes up out of it, and yeah. So after that, I just went home, I reflected, I thought about it and see what happened. I wasn't like, oh, should I retaliate? Should I do this? That wasn't even on top of my head, because I'm like, these guys, I'm like, obviously these guys, this is probably what they do. And sometimes you realize, you look at people and they're like, all they have nothing to lose. Myself, I have a lot to lose, right? I'm running a company. I got people that look up to me. Like, why would I lose my life over some, like, phones? At the end of the day, we're selling this stuff, right? Of course, I'm providing a service, but it's I have a way bigger purpose to what I'm doing, right? And so me losing my life to some phones wouldn't really make any sense. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna take it as a lesson, right, and just move on. And after that, I just cut everybody off. I told people, like, you know what? If you want to get in contact with me, if you want to buy phones off me, you're gonna come to the shop, you're gonna come to the office, and you're gonna buy phones. But in that lesson, there was a lot of lessons in there for sure. Number one is, like, you can't trust everybody. Like, you can't. People tell you, oh, your family, your relatives, right? It doesn't matter who it is. You can't trust nobody, man. That's kind of how life is, And that one taught me a lot, because I knew him since we were kids. We were growing up. So it's kind of very challenging on that one. And especially being a startup, like, that was probably 7 months into the business, you could probably say. Yeah, 7 months into the business. So I'm just accumulating a lot of cash, I'm building my capital, right? Trying to sustain it. And people don't know, like, business is hard, man. Especially when you start making money and you got to reinvest back into the business and try to make more money. And it's tough, man, but people don't understand what it takes to get there, right? And that's especially at that stage. So I'm like, you know what, it's all good. I'm gonna keep pushing forward and see what can happen. From there on, I just put my head up. I never quit. I got back up and I went back to the marketplace. I started creating more value, right? I started contacting people, right? And I really just did my thing. And then, you know, that $9,000 that I lost, literally miracles, they say miracles happen, man. The next month I was able to make that money back, and you know, and thankfully I got one of my connects that hit me up and said that I have this massive deal for you. And you know, that's when I really started doing a lot of my relationships and focusing on the community aspect of things, and it ended up working out. But it's a great example, like, you know, in this business you can make a lot of money, but at the same time, if you're not cautious, if you're not self-aware, you can also lose a lot of money too. That's kind of the downsides of it. Like, people just want to get into it to make money, but you know, you can be in a situation like myself. If you're not careful, if you don't have your guard up, you could potentially lose your life. I mean, that's kind of the consequences of this. So when people talk about entrepreneurship, making money and all this stuff, like, you'll see all the good side of it, like people making money, all this glorious things. But the downside is, like, you know, that could potentially happen. And for me, I just happened to be in there, someone that I know close to me. And same thing on marketplace, right? When you're meeting people, always meet at a public location. Don't meet them, like, you know what I mean, at a back alley, or, you know what I mean, somewhere where it's dark, right? Always make sure that, you know, you check the phone, you inspect all that, you do your due diligence, and then the money will follow. Because if you just keep focusing on the dollar amount and you forget the downside, which is your life, you know what I mean, you realize, like, all you have is, you only have one life, man. So if you lose it, like, you know, it's pretty much it, man. So, you know, that's kind of my story about, you know what I mean, getting robbed in the phone game. I'm just sharing this to help somebody else out, because I feel like people will try to test you. That's just the game of life, man. People will try to test you, but you gotta have that perseverance, man. And you know, you're gonna get punched a bunch of times. You know what I mean? That's life. It's gonna happen to you. And if anybody that tells you you're not, then they're lying to you, man. Anybody that tells you this game is easy, anybody that tells you that, oh, you can make money, you know what I mean, like, it's gonna be all just up, you know what I mean, it's not gonna be a roller coaster ride, they're lying to you. They're selling you a dream. So what I'm trying to do is I'm sharing this message to let you know that this could potentially happen to anybody, right? And unfortunately, I got caught in that, and I wish nobody else that happens to. You know, ever since that incident, I've been moving very carefully. You know what I mean? I'm always watching who I'm talking to, who I'm speaking with. I don't care who you are. You know what I mean? Like, if you say you met me a couple years ago, 5-10 years ago, it doesn't matter. We have to meet at a public location. You can meet me in my office space. Like, those things, like, now, they're just principles that I go by. So that's kind of my message. That's kind of my story when it comes to when I got robbed. And those were the 3 incidents that happened to me. I hope, I mean, nothing happens to anybody else like this. Just always make sure you do your due diligence, watch out, man, and take care of yourself, man. You know what I mean? Business is fun. Make a lot of money, but at the same time, there's a downside too. When people are going to try to test you. That's just the game of life, man. So if you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe. Stay tuned for more videos like this. Yeah, I'm out.